But I can tell you, we spend time on it. We spend time on working on our culture and our process and making sure that even if it means we're not in the gym. And a lot of times on Mondays, if we get in the weeds in our meeting room, I'll sacrifice practice time long before I will sacrifice culture. And so we.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to Season 3 of Flipping Out with Bridget Sloan. I'm your host, Bridget Sloan, and this season we are talking all things NCAA gymnastics. That means from athletes to coaches to the insiders who make it all happen. And for today's guest, I am so excited, the first guest of Season 3, please welcome Mr. Jay Clark. Jay Clark, the legend, the one and only, the head coach of the LSU Tigers and a natty champ as a head coach. I mean, how does that feel? What's that like?
That was awesome. I mean, it's I've probably maybe the most blessed person to ever coach college gymnastics. That's the way I look at it, because I've been involved in 2 different programs and had the resource and the ability to have the level of success that we had both at Georgia for a long, long time and then more recently here. And it's pretty cool. It's a good place to be. As you mentioned before we got on, I've been doing this a long time, so it feels good. I was more relieved than anything on this one because I just felt like we needed to get over the hump, and having been second several times and I just think the program needed that sort of exhale. It was like, Is it ever going to happen? And then when it happened, I think the explosion of joy from the fans and the team and everything was the thing I enjoyed most about it. But for me, it was just more of a sense of relief. It was like, finally, we got one,
Well, I mean, so since winning, it sounds like you guys have really just kind of gotten back to work, but talk to me about, I was on the floor. I was there. I saw it. It's a really cool experience being involved in it and being part of national championship teams and then also witnessing it.
Right.
But, you mentioned it was kind of like a little bit of, it's almost like a little weight. It's lifted off your shoulders.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like these emotions that it's almost hard to like put into words.
Yeah.
And you could just tell the fans, the athletic trainers, anybody that was there that was decked out in LSU gear, whether you loved LSU or not, you were there to cheer everybody on. But there were a lot of special moments that I saw kind of post meet. And I think that's one of the coolest parts of my job is that I do get to kind of see, I get to see everything, and it almost gets you emotional thinking about it. But, take me through kind of the last routine.
Well, I felt like, assuming Aaliyah hit, I felt like we were in a good spot. They turned the scoreboard off, and Garrett's job is to give me the scores as we're going, and he couldn't, and I was frustrated with him. But I didn't know. I felt like we did an okay job on bars, but I felt like we missed an opportunity to put some distance between us and Cal at the time. I was really more concerned about Cal than anything because I knew they were going to their best event, so I knew if she hit, I thought we were in a good spot, but I didn't know exactly how far ahead we were at that point. So I jokingly tell everybody that people said, "When did you know you won?" I was like, "Really, I didn't know for sure until Aaliyah dismounted." And I started in that routine. I was calling God by all his proper names, Yahweh and Jehovah, and trying to make sure that I addressed him properly because I was hopeful and praying that this was going to be the day, that we got over the hump. So, it was just I had so much confidence in Aaliyah Finnegan, and she went through some struggles a little bit last year, a little bit of ups and downs, and really. It took her a long time to get used to, being in that spot. I don't like to use the word anchor, but I think being sixth is hard. And some people are really just naturally cut out for it. And others, it takes a while to to get used to that. I think it's the right spot for her, but I don't think it was the most natural thing for her for a long time. And I think when there was a mistake ahead of her, sometimes it would climb all over her a little bit. And but there was something in that day, there was something in that moment that just that made me have a lot of confidence. I remember looking over after Sab had her mistake and seeing Sierra and Aaliyah talking to one another in the corral, and I watched them lean in and headbutt each other, and I just felt like this group gets it, and they're going to be in a good spot. And I was a lot more calm that if somebody had told me I was going to be in that situation and we had a fall early in the lineup, you know, how would I feel? I was a lot more calm than I think I would have predicted.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, talking about, I like that you don't like to call it the anger spot, because I think that automatically puts it adds pressure. I mean, when you go into any competition, you're like, oh, I'm angry. And you're like, well, shoot, if we have a mistake, that means I absolutely have to hit. So well done on that. Approaching it that way.
And but it's, to me, it's no more important. I mean, honestly, the most important position in that lineup was Sierra.
Yeah.
Getting it to
Lead
that
off.
start and the lead off on that event. Things go sideways first, and you really got a problem. So, I think they're all equally important, and that's why I don't like to label it differently than the other positions. I think everybody's got a personality to their gymnastics that they're cut out for
Mhm.
in a team aspect of gymnastics. Like, for most of your life it's individual, but um, that personality, it takes a special person to do it first, and it takes a special person to do it last, and everything in between. Part of our lineup design is trying to figure out who fits what role better, and it's not always about the routine.
I'm going to admit something that it took me a long time to realize. I used to get so frustrated with lineups
Mhm.
because when you know that you can hit, you want to go later in the lineup.
Mhm.
But man, did I learn there is so much strategy, and it is so strategic about each person. And like you said, like everybody, what is their strength? Okay. They are cool, calm, and collected. They
Yeah,
should probably go in the middle, because if there's a mistake early on, they can get them back on track.
that's right.
Maybe I should just be a head coach. My gosh.
Yeah, maybe you should. Maybe you should. And you're right. We talk a lot about that. We talk to the girls in the fall. We try to get an understanding of where they feel most comfortable in a
Yeah.
lineup. Do they like it, or do they like going early? Do they like going late? Do they Haley Bryan asked me to go first all the time. And I haven't given her that option yet, but
Amy.
yeah, she's being a little silly. But and I got hate mail in my email last year for Connor being first up on floor, and why is Connor this on beam? And fans don't understand that there's a lot of conversation that goes into that, and you have to be in the gym with these guys day in and day out to try to get a sense of. I mean, ultimately, we got to have somebody in all six spots, and you do your best to figure out how routines compare back to back. You look at, do I want this same skill to be looked at twice in a row, and is this one as good as the one I put ahead of it, and amplitude wise and those things, or there's going to be direct comparison? Am I hurting someone else's score by letting this one go first? And what is their personality? Where do they feel comfortable? There's just a lot of conversation that we have about trying to figure out those spots. And so we move things around an awful lot in the fall in preparation, and even early in the season we'll move some things around.
Yeah. Well, maybe I don't want to be a head coach, because that seems like a lot, and there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
But so we're going to kind of backtrack, because, you've been at LSU now going into your fifth. Is this your fifth season?
As the head coach.
As the head coach, yes. But before LSU, it was Georgia, and you were there for a minute,
Yeah.
some might say.
22 years total.
Yeah. And I mean, you were part of 8 national championship teams.
Yeah.
That alone speaks volumes. But I know we're not really comparing apples to apples here, because every program is so different. But were you
Mhm.
able to kind of take away, obviously you learned, I'm sure, a ton at Georgia,
Mhm.
and then heading into LSU, Did you see any similarity with the programs at all? Or was it just like, hey, these are two totally different programs. We're attacking them differently?
I think at that time, no, there were. I didn't. I don't think there was a lot of similarities. I think
Mhm.
there were some similarities with Dee Dee and Suzanne. There were a lot of stark differences as well. But there was, they both were, very driven, very passionate, lots of energy for what they were doing. Um, and I learned an awful lot from both of them in each of their capacities. I mean, I think, Dee Dee was still fighting some battles here that we had been able to fight earlier at Georgia and overcome in terms of
Yeah.
resource uh, and just support. And so when I got here, one of the first things I tried to do was help her fight those battles. And let's get some things moving here. And but yeah, there certainly were a lot of things, especially from a marketing perspective. I learned an awful lot from Suzanne, and what I watched her, and at some level got to participate in, um, uh, watching her build us from very small crowds to where we were selling Stegman Coliseum out, and learned an awful lot from her on that end. Learned an awful lot from a gymnastics perspective from Doug McGavin in those days, and
Mhm.
way back, as a result of recruiting, got to be mentored by Stormy Eaton a little bit from a coaching standpoint, a little bit, and he was a big influence on me. Um, Back in the day, and then coming here, just initially wanting to kind of fit in and assimilate and not make waves. And I'll
Right.
never forget, Dee Dee walked into my office one day and said, "Close the door," and she said, "Look, I gave you a title. I gave you this salary. I want your input because I've been doing it one way for 35 years, and I want to know what you think we need to do differently." And I realized in that moment that was huge. Like somebody that has been doing something as long as she had been doing it at the level she had done it, and yet she still was wanting to do things differently. There's not many people in the world that would adopt that kind of an attitude. And so, from that moment, she treated me much more like a partner than an
Mhm.
associate head coach or assistant coach, whatever you wanted to call me at the time. She treated me like a partner, and so we set out to identify, a couple of things annually, two or three things annually that we were going to tackle. We couldn't do it all at once. We needed to get the gym going and get that approved and start working on those plans. But we needed to build a booster club, and we needed to get a season ticket marketing calendar going, and all the things that. And there were so many things from an alumni perspective, and on and on and on, that we just. And so we sort of laid out a plan, and she brought me in that way, and that was, honestly, a very refreshing thing. I didn't know what I was getting into when I came here. If
Mhm.
I'm honest, for those that don't know, I was kind of run out of Georgia, and which was a very difficult time in my life because it's my alma mater and that of my parents and my siblings, and it's the only place I'd ever worked, and I knew it inside and out, and I could talk about the place that I was passionate about and that I loved, and it came across very authentically and genuine because that's what it was. And I didn't know if I could do that somewhere else. And so to have Dee Dee bring me here and give me an opportunity and to treat me the way that she did, and to give value to the ideas that I had was exactly what I needed. So, I learned a lot from both situations, both programs, both head coaches. I learned a lot from Greg Marsden. I learned a lot from Sarah Patterson, watching from afar over the years. I learned a lot from Val.
Yeah.
So when I was very young, I would pick these people's brains, or I would find myself eavesdropping on conversations and just listening, and trying to learn and trying to get better. Um, I didn't start out with this grand history in the sport, so I was constantly trying to absorb as much information as I possibly could, and that's really the trajectory of my career would be different if I hadn't been able to be around those people and have that kind of resource.
Mhm.
Well, you hit it lightly. But I did want to talk a little bit about recruiting because I think people don't realize how difficult it is. I mean, you're selling yourself, you're selling the team. I mean, you almost have to be the perfect salesman. Um, but you have always had a niche for it, in my
I
opinion.
didn't get you.
Well,
I mean, we're going to touch on this. Are we going to go
no,
there?
we don't have to touch on it. I'm actually here to like pump
Okay.
you up and like
Okay, good. All right.
let you know that even though I did not go to Georgia,
Yeah.
to this day, I have told anybody, whenever people ask me about my recruiting experience, I know mine was very, like it was not the normal, mainly because I was so late in the game. I
Right.
mean, I was a super late recruit. It was kind of like I knew. Basically, I had a feeling of teams were like, man, you're literally holding this spot, and there's only one school.
Yeah.
But to this day, and hopefully Adrian can process this, you were no doubt one of the best, if not the best recruiter that I encountered. And one of the things that really I think one of the things that really sets you apart is your authenticity. You know, you're not someone that's gonna kind of fluff it. You know, you're gonna tell you how it is.
Yeah.
But now with things being the way they are, all the resources, I mean, with recruiting and how important it is, what have all these new, NIL, we have to talk about it. It's huge.
Yeah. It's changing a lot and continues to change. I honestly, I've tried recruiting various ways at different stages in my career. Early on, I wanted to, be a snappy dresser when I did a home visit. I wanted to go in with a PowerPoint presentation and have an answer to every single question and assume that I knew what everybody wanted to hear and all those things. And over time, I just found that I'm better suited to talk about what I believe, and that's where I hope the authenticity and genuine sincerity comes across. Because I don't I don't ever want to recruit and feel like I'm selling something because I don't know that I'm a good
Yeah.
salesman, but I am good at being passionate and expressing what I believe and the values that I espouse and want to our program to represent, and the things that I think are special about our environment, and the things that I truly believe in. And so I've always tried to take that approach. I think I'm more relationship oriented, especially as I've gotten older. It's much more relational in my approach to recruiting, and I think we coach that way. And my staff, we're all very like minded in the way that we approach both recruiting and coaching. And so it is more difficult. And the challenges that we see now as a result of NIL and transfer portals and
Mhm.
all the things that are different now that didn't used to be there. And we've gone through phases where we were committing kids in eighth grade to now we're back to some semblance of reasonable time frame where we're doing it at 11th grade. But back in your day, it was of a senior. It was just everything has kind of run the gamut in terms of a timetable and all those things. But the difficult part now is that we are entering a stage where money is becoming part of the equation.
Right.
And while I'm very much a advocate for NIL for gymnastics because we don't have an NFL or an NBA or Major League Baseball, and so this is a great opportunity for them to you know monetize and make a little money from something that they've been committed to since probably 3 or 4 years old in many cases, and it's the only opportunity they'll get. And so I'm all for that, but I also think that we're crossing over into this thing where it's going to get greasy, and it's the collectives are getting involved and paying people and almost becoming like managers of what is about to become a de facto salary cap. Where these things are coming and they're just now entering our sport. We see them in football and we see them in basketball and really in baseball here at LSU and throughout the SEC. I don't know if that's nationwide or not, but we're beginning to see the sort of the birthing of that a little bit in our sport, and I'm hopeful that that doesn't become a major component to the recruiting process, because um, I have a difficult time with that. I think I want to provide an environment where they can profit and make money and do well. And certainly we have that here. We have an incredible NIL environment here. But I don't want to get in the business of using it as an inducement or an enticement to
Yeah.
get somebody here, because then, why are they really coming? And I want them to be here because they believe in what we're trying to do first. And maybe that's just old fashioned, and I got to grow up and understand that this is the game. But I'm just hopeful that our sport can, while it's going to be part of it, I know that. I hope we can remain a little more true to what we've been, and have the integrity, because um, our sport needs as many programs as we can keep. And if the ones at the top are able to really, there's always been programs that have more resource, and I'm fortunate that I've been at two of them now. But this just makes it even more so. And I'm spending a lot of my time raising money for things like that I have to, in order to be able to compete. But at the same time, I'm hoping that we can keep it at some sort of monicum of a reasonable level, if you will. I don't know if I answered your question. I just rambled a lot.
All right. So
I've been
we're
in meetings all day, rambling mood.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, Jay, you are truly one of the best recruiters, whether NIL is involved or not. And I just want to remind you that back in 2011, you were the 9th best recruiter in college athletics by ESPN, the magazine. And that, I feel like it's across the board. That's pretty cool. Like, that's pretty impressive.
I mean, I appreciate that. Thank you. I don't know what it really means. I think number one on that list was the shooting coach at Alaska or someone. And like John Calipari at Kentucky basketball was either ranked right ahead of me or right behind me. I don't know how they quantified that, but my mom sure loved it when we've got copies of that magazine, everywhere at my mom's house. She's got them up somewhere. So it's pretty neat. That was a cool thing to have happen. But
Heck yeah.
But the reality of it is, I just really think recruiting is about relationship building, and one of the reasons that you and I hope that you and I had a good experience in your recruiting process is that we kind of became friends in the process, and we developed a rapport and a relationship at some level that to this day, when I see you, it's still there. And so those are the things I enjoy about recruiting. It's really not about the system that's put in place, or all the bells and whistles that we're going to show kids. I enjoy getting to know the families. I enjoy getting to know the personalities involved, and that really, to me, has always been. Not only was it the place that I found my value early in my career, when I didn't know a whole lot about gymnastics to start with, but it's the part that I've enjoyed the most over the years, and it's still a part that I enjoy a great deal.
Looking for the best gymnastics gear trusted by the pros? DGS is proud to be the official supplier of grips to the U.S. national teams. They offer the largest selection of top grip brands, including Riceboard, Gibson, English Bulldog, and U.S. Glove, ensuring you find the perfect fit for your training needs. At gymsupply.com, you'll discover high-quality grips, mats, and a full range of equipment to enhance your performance. Stock up on grip bags, wristbands, wrist supports, chalk, and grip brushes, everything you need to stay at the top of your game. Whether you're an elite athlete or just getting started on your gymnastics journey, DGS has the trusted gear that athletes and coaches rely on. Shop now at gymsupply.com and equip yourself with the best in gymnastics. Perform your best and elevate your training today.
Well, you kind of led me into kind of wondering, what got you into what got you into gymnastics?
Yeah.
I feel like it's such a unique sport.
Yeah.
Most coaches are like, oh, I was a gymnast growing up, and I've never gotten your background.
There's quite a few of us that took this kind of odd journey. I was a very vanilla average athlete. All the way through high school, but I loved athletics and I wanted to be involved. I had taken gymnastics at a very young age, and so I could do some things. Even in college, as a young guy, I could still get on the trampoline and do a few things. I could do a round of peg handspring layout on the floor. There were things that I could still do. I'm not saying it was pretty. I'm saying I could do it. And
real question is, could you do it today?
No, ma'am. Oh man. But at that time, I was I was like, go to college and I was kind of washed up and didn't really have an identity and got to know some of the girls, became friends with a couple of the gymnasts on the UGA team, Sandy Roulette, people that will remember who she is, and Heather Stepp and Jennifer Carbone were on the team. And most of my classes at that time, because at that stage of my life, I thought I was going to go to physical therapy school. So I was a exercise physiology major. I was, and I had my classes were in the same building as the gym, the old gym, and what was then called the women's PE building.
Okay.
Not a good idea to label things that way anymore, but it was, and so between classes, sometimes there were these desks that sat outside, and I would Blimpie and get a sandwich. And people don't know what Blimpie is, it's like Subway, but it's sub sandwiches. And I would go to Blimpie, get a sandwich, come back and eat my lunch between classes. And the gym team would be practicing or about to practice. And so in the process, I got to know some of them. And long story short, Doug McGavin tears his bicep spotting somebody, and they needed someone to kind of help out. They didn't have managers at the time, but they needed somebody who could spot, who they could teach to spot, who could move equipment, who could, do the things that he couldn't do while he was kind of incapacitated with that thing. And that really started it for me. And they hired me as a kind of like a student assistant. And I really had no intention of it becoming anything. Was planning to go to physical therapy school, and it became painfully aware I wasn't going to get in the first time that I tried. So Suzanne called me one day and said, hey, I'm at Lake Herrick, which is a little lake out by the intramural fields at the University of Georgia. And she said, I'm sitting on the beach. My daughter's going swimming. Come out here. I want to talk to you. And so I went out there, and she said, I'm thinking about, making a change with the staff and long story short, would you be interested in a full-time job? And I'm like, yeah, I'd be great. I'm enthusiastic. I'll stick around Athens another couple of years, and this will be awesome. And the full-time job at that time, because there really wasn't one, she was just kind of pulling a rabbit out of a hat because she felt like she was another staff member. It paid $5,000 a year. And so I worked at a bar called Lowry's downtown in Athens, and I worked in the mornings at a TCBY. And just kind of lived a college life, even though I was right out of college, and I'd go to the gym every day and just kept trying to learn and soaking up whatever I could. And then eventually shortly thereafter, she got me involved in the recruiting process. And I had seen that done with my friends in high school and how they were recruited in football. So I had some ideas that maybe people weren't doing in gymnastics that were a little more creative, and it just kind of morphed into something that I really didn't intend to. And so I find myself 35 years later, still doing it, and it's been awesome. It's been really awesome.
I feel like that's how gymnastics coaching, it just sucks you in. You just get sucked in. And then next thing you know, well, my first time coaching was 20 years ago. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right. About right. Yeah. Well, moving on to, we are right around the corner. 2025 is pretty much here. I mean, I feel like November and December, they go by quickly as an adult, and as a student athlete, they went by, it was like they were in fast forward mode. I mean, it's always a really quick, into season.
Yeah.
Going in, so you know the pressure of being so close to winning a national championship. But now there is I don't want to say it's an additional pressure, but it's a different type of pressure when you're on the top
Yeah.
and you're no longer chasing, you're the one being chased.
Yeah. Yeah.
So going into this season, have you guys talked about that? It might not even be a thought. Some people think about it, some don't, but
Yeah. I think the thing that I was concerned about coming out of last year, and Baton Rouge is, these fans are nuts. They're unbelievable. They're the best ever. And when we won, it was enormous. We had a parade. We had a reception in the PMAC where there were 6,000 or 7,000 people in there, and it's gone on and on and on. And so the thing I worried about was that so much smoke being blown our way, and were we going to get complacent, and were we going to really be hungry, with this
yeah,
group, so many of them coming back from last year, were they going to, want it as much? And so I set out from the beginning to remind them that was last year's team. This is a different team. This is not the same team. There are some individuals, quite a few, that are the same, but the whole dynamic and personality of this team is going to be different because we had Kaya Johnson leave, and Sav's gone, and Elena's gone, and we're bringing in these new personalities, and
yeah,
so things are going to look different, and just try to get them to understand that the things that worked for us last year, the principles and the attributes that we've had the previous 2 years, need to remain intact, but that we're not trying to duplicate a particular outcome. It's really about going through this team's process and taking this team as far as it can possibly go, and just trying to beat that drum as much as possible. And I'll tell you, we've had, early in the fall, there were a couple of times when I was a little concerned, but in the last month and a half, I've really been super, super pleased with the way they're going about their business. They seem to be very unified, which can take time when you have personality changeover, and that's not without, growth is hard, and so sometimes there are conversations that we've had to have that about what's important, and being able to do that. But I'm proud of the leadership of this group so far. They Haley is certainly back, but we got Alona back too, and Aaliyah Finnegan has asserted herself much greater as a leader, each year as she's been here, and Sierra is a tremendous leader as well. And so I'm really pleased with where we are right now. We could get a little healthier physically, and I'd feel better. But I probably say that every year this time. You always want to be in a little better spot. But I don't know a coach that's ever 100% happy with where they are. But I'm excited about it, and I really try not to even think about what happened last year. That's great, and all the things. And you certainly are right that you go from being the hunter to the hunted, maybe in some respect. But I don't think anybody is under any false illusion. I mean, Oklahoma, probably will be the favorites to, again. I mean, they were human, and they had a bad semifinal, and that's the game, right? There is no defense, so you have to be able to hit when you get in those situations, and they've done a better job than most over the years of that. But I think we went overnight at that championship. We became the hunted when that happened, and my message to the team was, we have to stay in the eye of the hurricane. Let all that noise about this is your year, stay on the outside and just
yeah.
be who you've been, and make your approach the same. And I think I'll take the same approach with them now. It's just we've got to stay within ourselves, and it's such coach speak. You hear the same things about the process, and it's all the things. But the reality is that that's true. And the reason coaches say it is because there's an element of truth to it. And we, most of us believe similar, uh, things like that. But I can tell you, we spend time on it. We spend time on working on our culture and our process, and making sure that even if it means we're not in the gym, And a lot of times on Mondays, if we get in the weeds in our meeting room, I'll sacrifice practice time long before I will sacrifice culture. And so we're gonna spend time on that and make sure that we're doing it for each other and doing it for the right reasons. And it's something that's just, there's a lot that I'm flexible about, but there's a few things that are non-negotiable, and that's one of them. But I don't feel any greater sense of pressure to your question. I just think it's a new year. We believe we will be in the hunt. We believe we're one of the teams that could win it, and we're just going to let it play out. There were years last year we didn't look like we were going to win anything. We opened the season and barely got out with a win in our first home meet, and lost at Missouri, and had some struggles. So you don't ever know how a season is going to play out, and we have to stay true to what's worked for us and stay present. 5 minutes in front of your face. I say it all the time. Stay focused on the 5 minutes in front of your face.
I like that. You brought up, I wasn't going to ask this question because I didn't think of it, but, you talk about the process in gymnastics. You're so right. Every single coach is like, you have to trust the process. You got to commit to the process. And I think as athletes, that is without a doubt. For me, that was the hardest thing. I wanted to get out there. I want to go. I was ready. But there's a huge process. Do you think one of the reasons why, you were not just successful last year. You guys have been successful for years. But last year, you had athletes that were returned. You had great leadership, just like you do this year. But do you think one of the reasons why sometimes I feel like your freshmen get it quicker?
Well, that requires great leadership. See, like I was been in individual meetings all day today, and one of the things that we talk about is every person on our team has leadership qualities, and we don't do captains, and we're not going to single out certain people as our leaders. Obviously, your upperclassmen a lot of times tend to be in that role a lot naturally, but we don't ever want to squash anyone's leadership abilities. Some people are quiet leaders and set an example. Others are very vocal. Some lead, like Alona Shenikova's leadership style is that she keeps us grounded, and she leads us by setting an example that we're going to have fun while we do this. She's not the barker and the yeller, or she's not going to do anything like that, but she leads in her own way. And so, it requires that leadership is not about just saying what needs to be said or doing what needs to be done. It's saying what needs to be said and doing what needs to be done in a way that is received the way that it's intended. And so a lot of kids, they'll come in and they think because they're not afraid to say what needs to be said, but they say it in a barking, talk down your nose way.
Right.
That's not effective leadership. Effective leadership is much more about meeting people where they are, understanding why maybe they're having this conflict or whatever needs to be resolved, and then delivering the message in a way that they'll receive it because they respect who you are by the way you go about your business. And so we spend a lot of time trying to cultivate that, and coaches can't force feed that. Especially in today's world, I really believe that the best thing coaches can do is to get these young adults to understand the value of being able to hold each other accountable. Because if it's a coach trying to ram that down their throat, if it's a coach saying it's my way or the highway, those days are gone, number one. And number two, it's not effective because it's not real. It's just performative when they're in the presence of the coach. But if you can spend time learning what these values mean and how they're applicable to not only to this team, but the rest of your life, and why there's value in holding each other to these standards and doing it in a way that says, hey, I love you and I want us to do this together, and we want to succeed together. If we can deliver our messages in that context, then that's great. And so hopefully our freshmen get it quickly, and some do and some don't. And there's no magic written down 1, 2, 3, 4 formula that works every time. But I can tell you that it takes sincere effort. And sometimes it even takes ones who've done a great job of it being reminded that they have to keep doing it. Because as you get older, you get to 22 years old and you begin to think about moving into the next phase of your life. Sometimes you neglect things that have been important to you in the past, and we have to sometimes recenter that a little bit. But no, it's a part of what we do that I'm passionate about. We're not perfect at it by any stretch of the imagination. It's not always sunshine and roses, but we genuinely work at it and try our best to articulate those values to them so that they can adhere to them and want to adhere to them.
Well, Jay, you are just wise beyond your words.
I don't know. I don't know how wise I am. You just got me talking about something I believe in again. So
But I think that's what it is though. Gymnastics, you and I both, we love the sport. There's so many people that love this sport.
Mhm.
And it's true. When you start talking about something you're passionate about, it's like, do you have 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Do you have some time? Because it just oozes out of you. And I think it's so cool to have you, you have so much experience. You've got tons of coaching experience at every single level.
Yeah.
And it speaks volume to what you're doing now. I always say, my elite career really shaped who I was in college. Well, my college self really shaped who I am today. So it's like every stage of life, you want to be in the present, but also it's like, all right, well, what I'm doing now is actually going to shape future me. And it's like, is future me going to be happy with what I'm doing?
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point, like I tell our kids I'm not the coach I was 20 years ago. I'm totally different. I better be.
Yeah.
We all better be. And I talk a lot about our culture and those things. And you remember a gymnast from your era, Katie Heenan, was the one that really I watched how she came in as a freshman, and I learned more from her than she ever learned from me in terms of the value of that camaraderie and that genuine connectiveness that she and her teammates had as a result of. And there were others on that team that went along with it, but she seemed to be the spearhead of that at that time. And so I can give you example after example of athletes that I've watched and learned from and become a different coach, hopefully a better coach, hopefully a much more patient and grounded person than I was when I was in my 20s and in my 30s. But I continue to learn from these guys all the time. They're incredible, and they will teach you if you let them. So again, I'm blessed to have worked with some of these incredible athletes. I watched you one time in your collegiate career when things started out rough for that team on balance beam at the national championships, and I watched you will that team. And I wasn't in there. I wasn't in the huddle. I don't know what was said, but I saw a look of determination that came over you that became part of that team's identity that day. And you guys crushed the next three events. And I think it was it Florida's first championship that was won that way. And it was, and so I observed and I watch and I see it's not just kids that I coach, it's things that I see in other teams. And and I try to pick things and learn lessons from things that I see. And so I think we all have to be that way. We all should be ever changing and getting better and improving if we're worth our salt.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jay, I'm really excited. I say this every year, I know, but I am really excited for this next season coming up. I think the teams you guys are just getting better and better, which makes our job really exciting, and it makes it exciting to watch. And I think that's why there's just such amazing exposure for gymnastics right now. And I want to just keep that going. I want NCAA gymnastics to just keep growing and growing and getting that exposure and getting all these amazing athletes. I'm so excited for this next season for you guys. And
I'm too. And I think you all and the entire television piece is such a big part of that. I'm nervous that this revenue sharing and things like that could have negative repercussions on a lot of our programs. And I'm hopeful that through marketing and the exposure that we get, that we can weather it, and that these, that the programs on each campus can demonstrate their value to being on their campuses. And so that we don't, I'm a little bit concerned that that the sustainability is being threatened a little bit from the NIL piece and the revenue sharing thing, which is a totally different subject that we could talk forever about. But again, I appreciate what you do and what SEC Network and ESPN and ABC and all the great exposure that we're getting now is tremendous. We fought so long to get to a place where that could be done, and to have a partner in ESPN that has come alongside us, and we've had to make changes, but they've been willing to be respectful of the sport, and it's been tremendous. So I think that's a big key to our sustained success is the continued exposure that you all are providing for us.
You're welcome. Yeah, anytime.
You're welcome.
But no, I mean, it is. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be great. This season's going to be great. It's an exciting time. So I just want to say thank you. I'm really appreciative of all you do.
It was the most unequivocally, unapologetic Bridget moment right there. You're welcome. That's Bridget Sloan for you, folks. That's right there.
And cut. Yeah.
And cut.
No problem. No biggie. Yeah. Yes. No, Jay, thank you. This was great. Can't wait for the season, and hopefully we'll be on site.
All right. I'll look forward to seeing you. Thanks so much.
And that wraps up today's episode. I hope you all enjoyed it, and make sure to tune in each week because we'll be dropping new episodes with the amazing guests I have lined up for you. This is season 3 of Flipping Out with Bridget Sloan. I am your host, Bridget Sloan, and make sure to keep an eye out on our social channels because you will not want to miss the amazing giveaway we are doing with our friends at SPIETH. Make sure to like and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day. Let's make some good life choices out there, and don't forget to be awesome. Bye, y'all.